Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric, and we're continuing series on the Steam Deck. More importantly, how to set up some of your favorite retro gaming emulators on deck so you can relive those games on non-target hardware. And a lot of you guys have been asking for Sega Genesis, so I figured why not do that next. And even though we got No Man's Sky on the screen, just because it's a fun look at what the Steam Deck was made for technically, emulation on this thing is absolutely spectacular, and we're going to get everything running on it. Before we get too far involved though, if you do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But Sega Genesis and Mega Drive emulation have been around forever, but on the Steam Deck it is such a great use case of those emulators, and we are doing Genesis GX Plus here. Just be aware there's more than one emulator on your system if you so feel on changing it. This is for Genesis GX Plus. You'll see here that I have the zip files for all the games I'm going to add over, and you should be adding only things you own, and you have zips as well as the .md files. And if you go to the EmuDeck GitHub page, for each emulator that's installed with EmuDeck, you're going to see whether or not you need a BIOS and what formats the files can be added in for the emulator to understand. So you do have a choice of files that is up to you how you want to do it. But you will see here this is a great resource to see what you need as far as files and BIOS files are concerned. But just be aware that this is Genesis and Mega Drive specific, that you do not need a BIOS file. Because Genesis GX Plus also does Sega CD and Mega CD games, you may need a BIOS file depending on what you're trying to do with the emulator. So refer to my Sega CD setup guide in the playlist, because it's only BIOS if you're dealing with cartridges. But go ahead and make a folder on whatever media you want to use. I use a USB thumb drive, and just paste over the files that we're going to send over to our Steam Deck. Now all my tutorials are based on just using a dock and using a plug and play device. You can use an FTP or other file transfer systems to get files onto your deck, but I figure if you know how to set up an FTP, you probably know how to set these emulators up in the first place. But if you want to see a video on other ways to get files onto your Steam Deck, leave me a comment down below and maybe I'll make that in the future. But once you put whatever mountable media you have in the back of the dock, you're going to see Mount and Open, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. And then you're going to get a folder with all of the files you just added. I have mine set up in a folder structure. However you do it is up to you, but all we're going to be doing is copying these games into their appropriate folders. Now you may see that some are marked Japan and some are marked US. You can mix and match these. You're going to find a Genesis folder, and you're also going to find a Mega Drive folder. I put everything in one folder, and it's just going to come up on the headings as Genesis/Mega Drive. You can do whatever you want, it's totally up to you. But if you come into your EmuDeck installation and you'll scroll down until we get to the G's, you're going to see Genesis right here. It's not under S for Sega. Every single folder is demarcated alphabetically based upon the console, not the maker. So go ahead and just paste everything over that you want, and you are 100% good to go in that respect. But like I said, if you do scroll down, you're going to see Mega Drive as well. Technically, you could put your ROMs in here if you wanted to kind of isolate the regions out. I just don't see any reason for that whatsoever, but I figured I'd tell you you could do it versus somebody asking me how to do it. Your mileage may vary as to what you want to do. Totally your pick. And like I said earlier, you don't need a BIOS file for the Genesis or Mega Drive, so that is completely not part of this tutorial. But once you get all those files loaded up, you're going to relaunch EmuDeck, and you're going to come into Tools and then Steam ROM Manager. Just remember that the controls do slightly change when you're using this program, and then they change back. By default, all your parsers should be turned on. If things are not showing up in your preview list, that means either the files are bad or the parser is turned off and it's not looking for it. Hit preview, hit generate app list, and then you can filter by category, so you can just go down to Genesis and see everything that you have just recently added. So go ahead and filter by category, scroll down until you get to Genesis Mega Drive, and then all of the games that you just selected and put onto your Steam Deck are going to show up here. You'll see they have full art, but the nice thing is, depending on how popular a game is, there's probably going to be more than one art option. So if you want to play around and change what art you want, just go ahead and click that button right there and you'll get new art. Once you're satisfied, go ahead and hit Save App List, and when it says Done Adding Removing Entries, you can go ahead and close Steam ROM Manager, the EmuDeck program, and you'll return to gaming mode so we get ready to play some games, which is what we're here for. You'll see that we have a Genesis/Mega Drive folder, and all of the games with the artwork that we just added are here ready to play. And it's going to be such a good experience because Genesis GX Plus is an excellent emulator, but just remember there are more than one and you can play around with them. I pick an emulator for each of these tutorials based upon what I think would be the best in my opinion, but opinions may vary. So if you're going to leave me a comment down below and say you should have used X instead of Y, I know I could have. I made a choice. But taking a look at Splatterhouse 2 here, one of my favorite games on the Genesis, we're going to go over some of the options that the emulator has available, because just because your games are running does not mean you are done with the setup if you don't want to be. There's a lot of fun options that you can articulate, and I want to go over some of the biggest ones with you. That way you can get the best experience out of these games, because trust me, you want to be playing Splatterhouse in all of its glory. So as usual, just push down on the 2 analog thumbsticks, and that's going to bring up the RetroArch menu, and then from there if you go down into core options, that's going to be all the options for this core, and you'll see here Genesis Plus GX. I always reverse GX and Plus, I'm not sure why. System hardware, it's just going to be on auto because this does deal with more than just the Genesis and Sega CD. System region, again, the ROMs have headers, just leave it as auto unless you have any problem launching something. Then you'll see a lot of CD options for the core. Since we're just dealing with Genesis, you'll want to go over to my Sega CD video to see what those do. But don't forget, we also have aspect ratios as well, things like auto or uncorrected, because we can go into RetroArch settings under video, and you'll see an option called scaling. We can do integer scaling. That way, if you see any shimmering or you want that perfect scale, you have those options to do so. Some people love this and only play on integer, some people don't touch it at all. I kind of mix and match between the both of them. But you'll see here on video as well, we can put cropping borders onto the Genesis. Some things are important, some things are just kind of fun to play around with, like these NTSC filters. You can use them if you want, you don't have to, but there's a lot of cool options here, as well as different interlacing modes. 99% of the time you're not going to touch these, so just go ahead and leave them as is. One really important option though under Mega Drive and Genesis FM is you have different sound chip options, and you have the nuke option. This is most people's preferred, and I'm switching it over to here. I think it sounds good, better 75 to 80% of the time, but every once in a while I like going back to the original option. But just be aware that that does exist, and a lot of people like to switch it to nuked, and that is not on by default. But something like Comic Zone, amazing game, so much fun to play, and playing this as a handheld game on the go is great, but of course with the Steam Deck, you pop it in that dock and you're playing on your couch. But I just talked about different audio options, so go ahead and listen to how good this core sounds for like 45 seconds, and I'll be right back. Had to sneak a little Streets of Rage 2 music in there for you because it's one of my favorite soundtracks on the Genesis. But let's talk again about that integer scaling. More importantly, what it does and how it affects certain things. Because without integer scaling applied here, as that light scrolls in, you might see some shimmering on it, and you might notice that some of the pixels don't seem to be perfect size. Now with YouTube compression, it might not be as obvious, but if you go over to integer scale and go back to the game, now all those pixels seem to be the same size, because this is doing a pseudo transparency with that dithering, and this is a situation where that integer scale is very important to me personally. But obviously, if you don't care that much, you can just go ahead and turn it off. That's the great thing about this, is that all the options can be toggled in like 5 to 10 seconds, and you'll see now that you get a little bit more shimmer, but you get a full screen. You need to decide what looks best for you. There is no right or wrong answer. Technically, integer would be the hardware correct answer, but if you don't care about it, then it's fine for you, then it's fine for me, and I'm happy for you. You get to pick what you want to do. But you'll see here in something like Gunstar Heroes, all of the performance is exactly as you would expect from original hardware. It's running smooth, it's running fast, all of the controls work, everything is great. Now in a moment we're going to talk about when the controls don't work, because for some strange reason I have noticed on this emulator with EmuDeck only that sometimes the controls are absolute garbage and the button assignments are 100% broken. In something like Gunstar Heroes here, everything worked the minute I launched the game. But in something like Sonic the Hedgehog, my jump button was pausing the game, and I have absolutely no idea how this happened. But you'll see here, you can change the control binding. So if you have just garbage on screen, go ahead and change the controls via your settings on the Steam Deck, because this is doing weird things like assigning like the Y button mouse 4 click and the B button mouse 5 click, and the X button is show keyboard. I do not know how this is happening. I have not figured out why it's happening. It only happened on Sonic itself, but if you have garbage in your controls, go ahead and rebind them. It might just be a bug with EmuDeck. It might be the Steam Deck itself not understanding how to parse those controls over, but I only saw on Sonic the Hedgehog. Everything else worked perfect. But if you're having issues with the controls, check that out, because I do not know why the B button would bring up the keyboard and the Y button would be mouse click 4. But if you follow these directions, you're going to be playing Sega Genesis or Mega Drive on your Steam Deck. And of course, if you run into any problems, go ahead and leave me a comment down below and I'll try to help the best I can. But if there is an emulation setup video you have not seen yet that you want to, leave me a comment down below and I'll probably make it. Short of that, Genesis on Steam Deck is amazing. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.